Hi there, this is Yash Tiwari. Today we are going to be having a conversation about what I like to call as the mindful speaking. In today's modern world, communication is becoming a very integral part of our lives. It has been since time immemorial, but especially in the globalized world that we are living in right now, every single field of career requires for you to have the basic communication skills. Every avenue of interaction or relation requires for you to have the elementary level of speaking skills. And most importantly, especially in the digital age that we are living in right now, even the smallest of interactions that you have in the form of comments or messages, they too are dependent on how well you can communicate your thoughts in a very short span of words, but in the greatest of impact. And this is what it all boils down to. Communication is not about a very lengthy speech which is delivered. It is about delivering something which creates an impact, which feels memorable, which is insightful, but most importantly, it's also intriguing and interesting, even when it just might be a few words. Think about it this way. When you go to watch a movie, let's say of 3 hours of length or 2 hours of length in the big screen, you don't just go there blindly, not often at least. Firstly, you check out a poster of it, or you even just watch a trailer of it or a teaser of it. Now, these trailers or teasers are barely 1 minute in length or 2 minutes in length, and yet they are able to inspire you, intrigue you, and interest you in watching that movie on the big screen. The point of matter is, it is not about the largeness or the length of a content which creates an impact. What creates an impact and gauges the attention is that how much you can possibly pack and convey even in a few words. And this is what the mindful speaking is all about. Now, there are two ways to communicate your thoughts in any given moment of time: the speaking, the ordinary communication, the generic way of sharing your thoughts, not even sure about whether the other person or the people, if you are addressing an audience, whether they are even interested in listening what you are sharing or even at all hearing what you are sharing. And then there is the mindful speaking, the mindful way of communication in which you are certain that every single word you are saying has such an impact, has such an insight, and has such an intrigue packed in it that it will most certainly gauge the attention of your listeners. Now, when you compare and contrast these two avenues of communication, the ordinary, generic form of sharing your thoughts, and then the mindful speaking, the mindful communication, that is where you get the answer to most of the concerns and troubles and issues in your life. What I mean by that is, think about your own journey so far and the roadblocks that you might have faced every now and then. Maybe a job interview, which, by the way, you had the most perfect CV for. On paper, your experience was absolutely brilliant, but somehow you did not even qualify to the personal interview round. In the group discussion itself, you were not selected because the other candidates, despite you having a great experience, the other candidates were able to verbally communicate better and got selected for the next round. Let's say hypothetically you even made it to the personal interview. Once again, the same scenario arises. You have the brilliant CV, the great internships you have done, the great jobs you have already completed, and you give that CV, the printed paper, to your interviewer, and they are fine with that. But the moment they start asking about who you are, what you can verbally share about yourself, you stammer. You feel stuck. You feel so afraid and anxious and nervous that you are not able to speak anything at all. Or even if you try to communicate, your words feel very incoherent. This was, by the way, a professional avenue. Maybe it is something personal, like you go to a certain movie or a certain show with your friends. And when you come back out of it, the five of your friends, and you, of course, included, you guys are standing and everyone is able to share their thoughts. They are able to share their ideas and opinions and critique about that narrative. You are the one who has the best opinions about it. You are the one who has the greatest of ideas about it. And yet, they are the one who are able to speak. You are not able to share your thoughts because the thoughts, the critique, the idea, it's bubbling in your mind. You have the words in your mind. Just somehow you're not able to articulate it properly, or should I say, in a mindfully impactful manner. And so, once again, you feel left out. And the list can go on and on and on about those moments where you had the best ideas in your mind, you had the best experience in your mind, you had the best of things to say. You just did not know how to exactly communicate it in the most effective and structured and impactfully mindful manner. This is what our conversation today is all about. How do you make sure that when you are trying to create an impact on, let's say, a person who is trying to engage with you in a professional capacity, they are interviewing you or they are listening to your presentation or whatever that might be, or even in a personal capacity, whether it is about the relationships that you have personally with people, your partners, your children, your family members, your parents, your loved ones, your friends, anyone really, even the new workplace that you join and the colleagues you desire to befriend and be a part of their club. How do you make sure that even in that first interaction that you have with them, there is something they remember about you? There is something they remember about the way you speak. And most importantly, there is something that they are looking forward to interact more so about when it comes to you particularly. So that is what we are going to get to learn about in this conversation today. Now, when I talk about the comparison between communication, or rather the generic basic way of speaking, and the mindful communication and mindful speaking, one thing that always stands out is the fact that communication itself is not a singular entity. The reason why it feels like it is because we have a very generic preconceived notion about it. At least most of the people have that communication is just about speaking out the words. It's just about writing down your thoughts, whatever they might be, and just putting it out and hoping that somebody will, catch a whiff of it and would want to talk with you further. In reality, that kind of conversation, that kind of generic communication, or those generic voices are only becoming a part of the noise. They are not standing out. They are not creating an impact. The impact is created by those voices that are coherent, that have a structure in them, and most importantly, that understand that in order to improve the way you communicate, in order to speak mindfully, it's not just something as a whole, like a singular entity you have to work on, but specific domains, specific dimensions that have to be respectfully and respectively worked out. The reason why I have used both of these terms, respectfully and respectively, is because you firstly need to understand that every single dimension of communication, every single pillar of communication, as I like to call it, has to be respectively, separately worked out, understood, and improved. And then each of those respective pillars have to be respected as well. What this means is you're not just saying that you have great ideas, you are also respecting the way you communicate. You're not just saying that your examples are great, you're also respecting the language with which you're communicating those examples. The point of matter is the moment you start respecting and separating the various dimensions of mindful communication is when the process of improving starts. This is something which I personally learned a lot when I was recently working on my book, The Mindful Revival Habits for a Lasting Change in 50 Days. I had one very clear idea in my mind. There is either the direction of, let's say, motivating my readers, telling them about all the habits they need to develop in their life in order to improve themselves, just through a generic way of sharing the, content or information or insights with them. Or I create a structure, a map work, which is of this divided format in regards to the various days over which they get to embark on the journey of mindfulness or the journey of improving who they are and the habits that can make them a better person. And when that happens, when you try to divide a singular entity into smaller parts, it becomes easier to work out. It becomes more, we can say, efficient and possible for you to not just think of the concept of, let's say, self-improvement or self-growth or self-help as something very vague or philosophical, but something that is feasible, something that is practical, and something which is easily achievable. So on that optimistic note, let us also talk about what are the various dimensions of mindful communication you need to work out. There are 5 pillars I want you to take a look at. Now, think of these with certain words specifically: content, clarity, creativity, connectivity, and confidence. When you are trying to improve your mindful communication skills, firstly work on the content. You make sure that whatever you are trying to speak, it's not something too generic that even any person can simply Google up and they will get the results out of it. You want your content to feel authentic, you want your content to feel genuine, and most importantly, you want your content to feel specifically unique to you as a person. Not something that anyone can copy paste and read out, but something which aligns with your personal life experiences, your personal expertise, and most importantly, your personal areas of interest. Because when that is felt in your content, whatever you are sharing, that is when the audiences and the listeners feel like they want to genuinely listen to you. Secondly, working on the clarity. Now, the clarity is very specifically about two particular points. Number one, it being the clarity of your own mind, you knowing what exactly you are talking about, having the absolute clarity about the concept you're willing to share with your audiences, yourself first, and then secondly, the clarity in your pronunciation as well. Nobody is asking to make up an accent which might be not your own, because in that way, you are just gonna be compromising on the clarity of words. The clarity in the specific words you are communicating, it matters a great deal, because eventually the listeners, they care a bit about your accent, but not as much as the fact that whether they are able to understand what you're speaking or not. And they are able to understand what you're speaking only and only when the words are heard by them clearly. So, secondly, you have to work on the clarity, but that of course leads us to the third point, which is about the creativity. Now, I'm not going to be defining creativity for you because that is going to be the absolute opposite of what I want to convey to you. Creativity is supposed to be something that nobody can define for you. Why is it that certain speakers or orators or public celebrities, they catch your attention as opposed to everyone else? Because the way they present themselves feels so different and so distinct that you are willing to know more about them, learn more about them, and listen more from them. So you have to define it for your own self. What is it that can make you stand out, make you feel a bit different, not just in what you are sharing, but also the way in which you are communicating. It could be about humor, it could be about the specific, we can say, proficiency with which you are communicating in a language. It could even be about your mastery or your expertise with numbers and statistical data whenever you start speaking about a certain topic, whatever that might be, for you to decide what your area of creativity is and being comfortable with that, not trying to, let's say, copy paste anyone else or not trying to mimic anyone else. That is what is going to make you stand out, which leads us to the fourth point. Even when you are standing out, how do you connect with your listeners? So you have to make sure about a few things if you want to establish connectivity for mindful communication. Eye contact always has to be there. You cannot compromise on the eye contact. Your body language has to show that you are confident. Your body language connects with your audiences as much as your words, making sure that your stance is proper. You are standing with a very straight back. You are not hunched. You make sure that the moment you step on a stage, or even if you're sitting in a chair in front of an interviewer or even a friend, you have a proper disciplined body posture which communicates to your listener that wherever they are, in whatever position they are, you are confident enough to communicate with them. You are confident enough to share your thoughts and not feel too scared to communicate it to all the people who might be in front of you, or even if it might be just one person. And then, of course, a bit of a hand gestures every now and then, making sure that you feel less robotic and more human, and making sure that even your breath is maintained while you are speaking. Do not try to hold your breath for too long because listeners can catch on that. If it is such an anxious person who is not even making sure that they are breathing when they are communicating, it shouldn't be something which is constantly caught on the mic either, but it has to be something which allows you to maintain a rhythm, a pace, even with your words. Wherever there is a moment, you can take a breath, making sure that it is not so long that it feels like either boredom or borderline anxiety, and not holding your breath for too long either, which certainly assures the listener that you might be anxious. So when the breath is normally approached by you as a speaker while you are speaking is when you feel far more confident. But that, in fact, is what the fifth point of our mindful communication is all about. Making sure that confidence is fed not just in the way you are communicating your words, but in your mind as well. So, in order to establish a sense of confidence in your mind about your own self, only one single rule works out. And I know so many people can share so many rules, regulations, tips, and tricks about it. But for me personally, the one specific point which always works out the most effectively in order to develop self confidence is self appreciation. You appreciate anyone and everyone on their smallest of works and, of course, the greatest. But the moment you start appreciating your own self as well, regularly, before going to bed, you tell yourself you'll try to do better tomorrow, but you are happy with the progress you made today. You wake up in the morning and you tell yourself, this is a bright new day and I will make sure that I live it to the fullest of my potential and I appreciate the person I am. These small affirmations, they might sound too philosophical or so psychological, but in reality, they work wonders because they kickstart a reaction in your brain which basically helps you stimulate the confidence you require in your day-to-day communication, whether it might be in personal avenues or it might be in professional avenues. So work on these 5 pillars of mindful communication, improve the way in which you share your thoughts, and most importantly, believe in yourself and appreciate yourself every day.